Hi boys and girls, it's me, and Happy New Year 2020. Where did the time go? It just went. That's how it goes. Hope everybody had a happy Christmas holiday, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or whatever it is that you celebrate, Festivus, whatever it is that you celebrate. Between Christmas and New Year, Mrs. RW and I did something that we generally like to do. We like to go out and scavenge things in antique shops and just look around. Half the time we find something, and the other half of the time we don't. But this time we actually picked up something I've always wanted to have. A hippo. Yes, I got a hippo for Christmas. Okay, and here's the cabinet. Now I got this radio. It was pretty dirty. Had some kind of spillage or something on it. And it definitely came from a house full of smokers. So what I did was I kind of cleaned everything off in simple green. Had a few little dings and scratches on. So what I did was I took I can get this, probably you can see right there. There's a spot that I touched up, and there's a couple over here. There's also some, looked like they were like bluish green paint splotches on there, which I cleaned up. And then I was able to polish this up and touch up some of the paint chips. And you want to know something? It actually looks really nice. This is the original lacquer paint on the radio. Now, here is this has a weird, one of the things I love about this radio is it's got a really weird tuning arrangement. This is a lens, okay, with all your frequency numbers on it. That actually goes in here. It slides through this slot here, and then there are two prongs. There's one right there and then one on the other side. And you slide that in there, and then there's these catches that'll hold that on there, and then it just kind of snaps into place. And this is the actual dial indicator. Now, I showed you just before that extra string. Well, that extra string ties to this, and as you move the bread slicer or the tuner up and down, this moves right along with it, and there's a light behind it, and it indicates the frequency. You see there's a clear part of that window, and that'll indicate through there. And when I had the radio in here and it was still kind of dirty and I powered it up, you could barely see it, but now I've cleaned everything up and should show up pretty good. So now I just need to get the lens back into the radio case, and then I could probably get the chassis in there. Okay, I don't know how well that's coming through here in this shot, but that's the catch for the one side of the lens there, and that's the catch for the other side of the lens there. And I'm not going to try to do two things at once. There's actually a spring here, and that extra string's going to attach to this little hook right here. So as you go up and down the band, it'll indicate your frequency. It's a spring-loaded thing. Here's the spring right here. And I decided to leave it in there. I had no reason to take that out. So that's how it works. Let me get the lens in. Okay, the lens is back in. I got it over those two little humps. So I can get the pointer on there. There's one right there. I get the light just right, so this, get the camera out of the way. There's the second one right there. I don't know how well that's coming through, but I had to lift up the tab on this side, this one right here. I got underneath of this with a screwdriver, picked it up just enough. It actually moved, the whole thing came up because this just sits in a knurl, molded knurl, and got it positioned in place. And then I was able to snap it all in there. And let me get there we go. And now our dial's back on there. And now it's starting to look like a radio again. Okay, here's the top of the chassis. These shafts here, this guy is your volume control where I got the pointer, and then on the opposite side is the tuning, and here's your bread slicer here. We got the 2 IF cans. Tubes, we have a 14 AF7, I believe, which is a converter tube. You got 2 7B7s, and what would be a Philco without a 7B7, right? 35Y4 rectifier, okay. 7C6, this is your, I think, detector and oscillator tube. And finally, they have, hey, an octal. How did this get here on Philco? It's a 50L6. I think some versions had this, a different version of this, either a 58.5 or whatever. But after I did the IF alignment last night, the thing turned out to be a pretty decent little performer, just sitting here on the bench. Okay, here's the bottom of the chassis. The yellow pieces, as you can see, those are the capacitors that I replaced. There's still 2 wax capacitors in here, but I actually tested fine. So I didn't need to change them out. And this big red splotches, I know it's kind of ugly, but what's underneath it, there are 3 capacitors. There's a 33 and 2 22s in here. For a total of 3 electrolytic caps. And I didn't have anything. This was just kind of strapped down to one of those tubular multi-section caps. So I kind of strapped this guy in here and made it as tight as I could just to keep it from vibrating. I didn't have any clear silicone, which is what I like to use. So this is like automotive RTV. And it's actually better quality, a little more expensive. But those guys aren't going anywhere. They'll be just fine. I only had to replace 2 tubes. The output tube, the 50L6, had way too much transconductance, and seems like it took forever to come up on the tube tester. But once it got there, it just kept going. And one of the 7B7s was marginally weak. The rest of the tubes seemed to be okay. Now with the chassis set up on my bench here, there is a screw. Oh, there goes Berwin. He's a camera hawk. There's a screw here for external antenna if you want to have it. And you notice here we have a wire or loop antenna. This is actually a tuned loop, which has connections to the back here. When I got the radio, though, one of the wires was off. And it was off to the antenna section of the bread slicer. It's a 2-section bread slicer. There's no RF stage on here. So that's the only other thing I had to do chassis-wise in alignment, so it still has to go in there. Oh, and by the way, you might be seeing this little string hanging out here. That's not all on its lonesome. Well, there's a purpose for that, and I'll show you what that is in a second. And Berwin's just kind of double-checking my work. Oh, no, actually, he's trying to get at the camera lens. What do you think, Berwin? Pretty decent little, nice little radio, huh? Nice radio? Huh? I'll hold on to the antenna so it doesn't get tangled into anything. Tilt it just to get it past the assembly. It's not right. What's going on? Oh, that's right. We had to tilt it. There we go. Now it went right in. That's what it's supposed to look like. All right. All right, so I'll get some masking tape, or actually some Scotch tape, because that's kind of how this antenna was in here. We'll get this position back on this hook. I have to turn the radio on and find the station, and I'll get the pointer pointed out, whatever. And actually, you know what I should do is maybe I should, before I get too far ahead of myself, I'll put the screws back on the chassis, and that way it ain't going to go anywhere. Okay, boys and girls, we're getting on the home stretch. We're basically got the radio screwed down. I even put the knobs in on top. The last thing we have to contend with is this guy here. And this is like incredibly simple. What you do, this has to be, I know where I'm at on the frequency. You want to know the frequency of the dial you're on. Pull this, let me get this pointer so you can see it better. Maybe I can get a... Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay. So this guy here, there's a little small loop that's a little hard to see. But you pull this thing away. This is just a piece of spring steel. You pull that away and you slide that wire back up in there. And now what that'll do is that as you move the bread slicer, now you can see that. You can see the bread slicer is moving tuning stations, but you're also moving the tuner on top of the dial. So let me just double check that and make sure that's positioned in the spot it's supposed to be. Otherwise, then I can just get in here and then I can either pull the wire back and pull the string in a little bit further, or move it out so it's positioned correctly up top. And once I know that, then I'll just put the dial light back in it here. Okay, the radio's almost done. We're missing two things to keep this thing from being 100% done. One is it's missing the original back. It didn't come with one. They do make them in reproduction that you can buy for, I think it's 25 bucks on eBay. I'm not going to do that. I have some masonite that I could actually make one. It won't be original or original looking, but it would work. So I'll do that sometime down the road. But the other thing that's missing is it used to have a label here on the bottom, right about here where I had my pointer with the label that said Philco on it, and that's missing. But I've got some Philco stuff right here, and I'm probably going to use this small one. I think it's the right size here. I cut one out here for another radio, and you can see here's a bigger one here, a bigger word Philco. But I'm going to use this one. I think this will probably be the right size to put on the radio. That's one of those water-soluble labels they used to use when you were a kid, you know. You dip it in the water and it peels off the paper. So let me do that now. And there's the finished product. And now you know it's a Philco Blue Man Group. I didn't want to put oils off my hand onto the sticker, so. Alright, boys and girls, thanks for coming and tuning in. Berwin's, well, he's seemingly having some fun on my bench. There we go. So, there it goes. Cats test gravity. Thanks for tuning in. Bye! A little bit.
At town, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on it.
And like all the guys, if you can take almost any...
Use this. If somebody...
Man. Westbound side on the exit ramp at interchange.
Well, there's the finished product. Oh, wait a minute. What's going on? Berwin, what are you doing? What are you doing?